Every year, millions of people head into the wilderness to relax away from the hustle and bustle of daily life, where they enjoy fishing, hunting, skiing, and hiking. But on occasion, an unlucky few make their way into the woods and are never seen again. Number 5. Glenn and Bessie Hyde met while traveling to Los Angeles via a passenger ship in 1927. The following year, they decided to get married after Bessie's divorce from her then-husband was finalized. For their honeymoon, the couple decided to head to the Green River in Utah, where they would attempt to raft through the Grand Canyon in record time. If they were to succeed, Bessie would enter the record books as the first woman to successfully complete a run of the canyon. Glenn had previously run the Snake and Salmon Rivers 2 years earlier, and therefore was confident that they would achieve their goal, whereas Bessie was far less comfortable on the water. Glenn would eventually construct their boat upon arrival, a 20-foot wooden boat. On the 20th of October, the couple set out on their journey, making good progress as they traversed the whitewater rapids of the Green and Colorado rivers. After nearly a month of rafting, they stopped at Grand Canyon Village on November 16th, where they stocked up on supplies and went hiking. Before setting out once more, Bessie spoke to a young girl and remarked, quote, "I wonder if I'll ever wear pretty shoes again." Glenn mentioned to Emery Cobb, a well-known photographer of the area, that he and Bessie didn't have life preservers, laughing off warnings from Cobb. They then had their photo taken, stating that they would retrieve the photo once they'd finished their trip. But by December, the Hydes had not made contact, and Cobb, becoming concerned, organized for a search to be carried out. The pilot of a small plane noticed the couple's raft on some rocks in the river, and upon closer inspection by Cobb and the party, they noticed that everything on the raft was neatly packed, including their food, clothing, and Bessie's journal. They also found a camera which had been used for the last time somewhere around the 27th of November, but the couple was nowhere to be found. Glenn's father, Reith, employed a search party to look for Glenn and Bessie, but after months of searching, they were still missing and remain so today. Since their disappearance, there have been so many theories brought forward as to what may have happened to the newlyweds, but no concrete evidence was ever found to explain their disappearance. Number 4. On October 14, 2016, the Curry County Sheriff's Office was notified that 2 men had entered the woods at the Bear Camp area of Shasta Costa Drainage in Oregon, and they had not returned. The 2 men were Sean Higgins and his 21-year-old son, Trevor, both experienced outdoorsmen. The father and son had been hunting in separate areas of the woods, but agreed to meet up at their truck. They would then travel to pick up Trevor's uncle, who was in yet another area of the woods. Trevor was the first to reach the truck, but as it was starting to get dark, he became concerned that his dad didn't arrive. Sean had been hunting on a footpath that ran parallel to a road, and knowing the area well, should have easily made his way back. Since it was meant to be an easy and quick trip into the woods, he'd not taken his GPS or backpack with him, as he didn't think it was necessary. Trevor's uncle was the next to arrive at the truck, still with no sign of Sean. He and Trevor decided to split up and search for him, and as darkness set in, Trevor also got lost. He decided to stay put and built up a shelter for the night, rather than getting more lost, and his uncle ended up calling the sheriff's office. Search teams from around the county set out to find the 2 men in rainy and cold conditions. 4 days into the search, Trevor was found after he heard the sound of people talking and calling out to them. He was suffering from severe hypothermia and was airlifted to the Bay Area Hospital by the U.S. Coast Guard. As the search for Sean continued, drones, helicopters, and search dogs were deployed, and scores of people from the area assisted in the search. But on Sean's 42nd birthday, October 23rd, the search was called off after having no success for 9 days. Friends and family refused to give up and continued to search for 2 more days, but without success. None of Sean's equipment was ever found, despite the fact that he was dressed in several layers of clothing. He was carrying a firearm and had plenty of ammunition. Number 3. Rico Harris was a talented basketball player who not only played in various International Basketball League teams, but also became a member of the Harlem Globetrotters. He would end up leaving the Globetrotters after just 1 month due to injuries that he'd sustained during an assault in the year 2000. Upon ending his basketball career, Harris started to fall into alcoholism and he started using drugs, causing him to be arrested on multiple occasions before making a full recovery from both addictions in 2007. In October of 2007, he moved to Seattle with his girlfriend, Jennifer Song, and he applied for a job as a property appraiser. He decided that before he started a new job, he needed to return to his family home to visit with his mother and brother. Song stated that she believed he was attempting to find closure from events that had caused him difficulties in his childhood. During his trip there, he would speak to a friend by phone who said that he sounded positive and that he'd spoken about starting a family with Jennifer. On October the 9th, he reached his family home and took one of his brothers out for a meal and gifted him with a new cell phone. Upon returning to the house, he asked to speak to his mother privately, but she felt that the conversation didn't go the way Rico wanted it to. At around midnight, he set out back to Seattle, where he would have his job interview the following day. He stopped to purchase gas and around 10:45 left a voicemail on Jennifer's phone saying that he was going into the mountains to rest, stating that he hadn't had much sleep during his trip. His phone was turned off half an hour later. When Rico didn't return to Seattle as scheduled, Jennifer phoned his mother, but they decided to wait and see if he would return, as he had disappeared for a few hours once before. But by the 14th, he'd still not returned and a missing persons report was filed. Rico's car, a black Nissan Maxima sedan, was found next to California State Route 16 by a Yolo County deputy sheriff, but Rico was nowhere to be found. A search party was deployed into the sparse woods, accompanied by helicopters and all-terrain vehicles, as well as airplanes equipped with thermographic cameras, but Rico was still missing 3 days later. On October 19th, fresh prints were found that were consistent with Rico's size 16 sneakers, leading to a creek near the area where his car was found. His phone was also discovered, containing photos of the creek and himself standing in front of a Welcome to Yolo County sign. In November, divers searched the creek to no avail, and Rico's disappearance remains unsolved. Number 2. Inventor Richard Lyman Griffiths, a man from Washington, traveled to Alaska in 2006 to test one of his new inventions, a survival pod. He was known to be somewhat of a rambler, having lived in New York, Florida, California, and Oregon before moving to Washington. Griffiths, aged 47, bought a bus ticket and traveled north, where he departed from the bus along the Alaska Highway. He checked into a lodge near the White River, where he reportedly told some of the people there that he'd planned to hike upriver to the outpost town of McCarthy, where he would put his new invention to the test. While preparing for the arduous trek, he spoke to friends in the United States and stated that he was considering spending the winter in Alaska. Mike Thompson, a former ranger, stated that he thought Griffiths was quite unusual, mostly due to the pod that he had invented and intended to test by himself, despite the fact that the area Griffiths was traveling to was known to be cumbersome, mostly thanks to massive glaciers and rough mountains, not to mention the fact that he would be completely isolated. But Griffiths soldiered on, and in the fall of 2006, he ventured from the Alaska Highway into the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness. This would be the last time he would ever be seen or heard from. Having told friends back home about his plans to stay in the area for the winter, he was not reported missing for several months, and no trace of Griffiths or his orange survival pod has ever been found. Number 1. John Devine was a 73-year-old man from Washington. In September of 1997, he traveled to the Olympic National Park boundary, where he decided to spend the weekend hiking with a friend, as he had done on many occasions before. Although he was legally blind in one eye, he was known as an experienced hiker, and despite his age, he intended to take on a challenging route. Devine's plan was to hike into the national park from Mount Baldy, which reaches nearly 6,800 feet in height. He would hike along the Maynard Burn Trail, which is notorious for being extremely steep and tough going. The last sighting of Devine was on the Saturday, when he was spotted hiking on the north side of the park in an area known as Grey Wolf Ridge. Later that night, when he'd not returned as expected, fellow campers reported him missing and 10 searchers were deployed to look for him the following day. It was noted that he'd only had snack bars to sustain him and was not carrying any other food or gear that might help him survive in the wilderness. 10 more people were added to the search party after he was not found on the following Sunday, joined by 4 search dogs, but their efforts were in vain and no trace of Devine was found. On September 12th, nearly a week after Devine had gone missing, a rescue helicopter was deployed to aid in the search. It was one of 5 helicopters that were combing the area. Shortly after taking off at 5,000 feet from a helispot, a designated level landing spot on Mount Baldy, the helicopter experienced difficulties and crashed with 8 people on board. 3 were killed, including the pilot Kevin Johnston, Rita McMahon, who trained dogs to aid in searches, and Taryn Hoover, who worked at the park on a seasonal basis. Following the crash, the search for Devine was called off, and chances of finding him alive were slimming, since temperatures were dropping rapidly and snow was expected to fall in the mountains. Sergeant John Kelly from the local sheriff's office stated that, quote, "If he was walking around up there, we would have found him by now." 14 years later, no sign of John Devine has ever been found. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.